Om Tyageshwaram Ramakrishnam Sharadam Matra Rupinim Vivekanandam Acharyam Natva Vakshami Shuddhaya. In our last class we discussed the sutra where it says Anyasmat Saulabhyam Bhaktau, which says that bhakti is easier than other. You have to understand here bhakti means the bhakti marga, not parabhakti or the supreme goal, which is the one with supreme knowledge. So here he is telling bhakti marga, Gauni bhakti, is easier than other paths of jnana, karma, yoga and all that. It is easier because we saw 4 or 5 reasons why he calls it easier. One is that there is no criteria of eligibility in bhakti. In other paths, one has to belong to certain varna, ashrama. One should have good physique at least, keen intellect and all those kinds of things. So, in bhakti, there is no such requirement, no such criteria that only such and such a persons can undertake the path of bhakti. There is no such thing. Anyone is welcome to undertake this path of bhakti, so it is easy. Second thing was no prerequisites, preliminaries so to say. No yama, niyama, asana and nothing required. Not required to study scriptures and decide the meaning of the scriptures, and then none of that is necessary in bhakti. So no other criteria are necessary. Third reason why bhakti is easy is it can be practiced anywhere. You don't need Chaila, Jana, Kushottaram, particular kind of asana on which you have to sit and then particular time of the day, and none of that is necessary. Anywhere you can love God, you can do bhakti of God, anywhere. Any action, every action can be turned into an act of devotion. So that is another advantage. So bhakti is sulabha. Another reason was that in bhakti yoga one doesn't have to change one's lifestyle. Whatever we are doing, we'll continue to do the same thing. It is only the change of the attitude. There is no drastic change in one's lifestyle, so to say. So hence bhakti is sulabha. And last and most important reason was that in bhakti yoga we have the help and support of God, which is the greatest advantage in bhakti yoga. For every small thing, especially pertaining to our spiritual life, we turn to God, and that is the advantage. It also helps us curb our egoism, the spiritual ego, so to say, that I am a great devotee. It won't come because the devotee is every day praying to God for purity and to overcome the obstacles. So naturally the ego is kept low in bhakti yoga. So all these reasons, on account of all these reasons, Narada Maharshi, these are the reasons given by commentators and what we know from other scriptures and all that. Narada Maharshi will give his own reasons, couple of reasons he will give, but these are in general the reasons which say that, which go to prove that bhakti yoga is easier. And we all are bhaktas, so we should be really grateful that God has brought us to this path of bhakti, and we should make utmost use of this opportunity that is given to us. Then Narada goes on to say, give 2 reasons why he thinks that bhakti is easier. Now these reasons appear to be context sensitive in those times. In the context of Narada's times, these reasons seem to be very valid or very useful, very forceful. One of the reasons is pramanantarasya anapekshatvat swayam pramanatvat. That is, Narada says bhakti doesn't need any other pramana. It doesn't expect apeksha, any other pramana, being its own pramana, because it is its own pramana. The word pramana means means of knowledge, instrument of knowledge. In other words, you can say proof. So bhakti doesn't need the help of any other proof. It is its own. It is its own proof. One can say that. This seems to be more oriented or directed towards jnana marga, because in jnana marga, the aspirant has to convince oneself about the purport of the scriptures. Upanishads. Upanishad is the pramana in jnana yoga. And what is the purport of the Upanishads? The aspirant should convince oneself. And to do that, he or she has to study the Upanishads first and then apply those 6 criteria. They are called Shadvida Lingas. 6 criteria that are used to decide the purport of any scripture, any text. How it begins, how it ends, what subject is repeated. Like that, there are 6 criteria. Those he or she has to apply and arrive at a conviction that this is the purport of the scripture, so that scripture becomes pramana, and then hold on to that conviction. So that kind of pramana is not necessary in bhakti. That's what Narada is telling, and hence bhakti is sulabha. Because in bhakti, the love of God, I don't need how to know God, how to love God. I don't need anyone to tell me. It just springs in my heart, and I know it is there. I don't need any proof that whether I love God or not. It is its own proof. So also in yoga marga and all that, one may have doubts. Swamiji says yoga, Raja Yoga should not be undertaken without the guidance of a guru. So it is so dangerous. So there is every chance that one may keep getting doubt in this Raja Yoga. And even in Jnana Marga also, whether the way one has understood reality, whether that is correct or not, confusion will be there, doubt will be there. But in bhakti, there is no such doubt. Swayam pramanatva. Bhakti is its own pramana. We see many times it happens, people see God's statue or a photo and feel attracted. That's it. The bhakti begins. You don't need anything else for the bhakti to start. So it is swayam pramana. It is its own proof. It springs of itself. So that is one reason Narada gives for to establish the saulabhya or the easiness of bhakti. And the other proof he gives in the next sutra is Shantirupat Paramananda Rupacha. This word Paramananda is a bit complicated in the sense, this is the reason given why bhakti is easier. And we are talking of bhakti as a path. And the reason Narada says, because it is of the form of peace and supreme bliss. He uses the word Paramananda, supreme bliss. Because Paramananda comes only when we have attained the Parabhakti. Parama is supreme. So supreme bliss can come only when we have attained Parabhakti. So we'll have to understand its goal is supreme bliss. But Bhakta will have happiness, definitely. Because love, first sign of love is happiness. When anyone is in love of God or in any other love, the first sign of love is happiness. So, because this bhakti is of the nature of peace and happiness, it is easy. We saw earlier in other paths, there is this confusion, there is this doubt, there is always this apprehension that whatever I have understood, the way I am going forward, is it right or not? This anxiety will always be there in all other paths. That is not there in bhakti, because one can really feel the bhakti in one's own heart. The love is felt in one's own heart. So, because there is absence of all these confusion, doubt, anxiety, it is of the form of shanti and ananda. So these are the two reasons that Narada gave. As I said, these seem to be more contextual during his times. May be very useful and forceful during his times. But we have seen other reasons which make bhakti, which tell us how bhakti is easier than other paths, which are valid and understandable and relatable even today. we have discussed it. So having given this background of bhakti and its easiness and all that, the next topic that Narada takes up is, we can call it, how a bhakta should live in the world. It's a very important topic, how we should live in the world, and it also gives us a criteria as to how we can measure our growth in this path of bhakti. Of course, it is Swayam Pramana. We know whether our love for God is increasing or not. But there are also other criteria. There is also another criteria which Narada gives, which we can use. He doesn't give it as a criteria, but we can use it to gauge or judge our growth on the path of bhakti. So the sutra is Loka Hanau Chinta Na Karya Nivedita Atma Loka Veda Vyaparatvat. That is the sutra. Loka Hanau Chinta Na Karya. One need not worry about Lokahani. One need not worry about Lokahani on account of having dedicated one's own self the worldly and religious activities. That is the translation. One need not worry about Lokahani since one has dedicated oneself, one's own secular activities and one's own sacred activities to God. Since we have done this, we need not bother about Lokahani. The word Lokahani means, see, a worldly loss, so to say, worldly loss. Loss of things of the world, loss of prestige, like that. That worldly loss, it's called Lokahani. And Narada is telling devotee need not bother about Lokahani, need not worry about Lokahani, Chinta, need not be anxious about Lokahani, about losing worldly things, worldly possessions, worldly acquisitions, because he or she has dedicated oneself, one's own sacred and secular actions to God. That is the sutra. Now see, this Lokahani may bother a devotee in two ways. See, two ways Lokahani may bother. Lokahani means, as I said, loss of worldly things, or so to say, missing the world, so to say, or having anxiety about future. All these are Lokahani, are covered in Lokahani. You see, suppose a group comes to a temple, and then few of them have a spiritual inclination, so they want to sit in the prayer hall, and the others are not interested. So the others will say, you sit, we will go and see the garden, we want to see the garden. It used to happen in Dakshineshwar. Sri Ramakrishna used to observe that. Some people would sit in his room and listen to him. The others would say, you sit, we will see the garden. Or worst case scenario, they'll say, we'll go and sit in the boat, but we will not sit in Sri Ramakrishna's room and listen to him. So people will have different inclinations. So, but anyway, what will happen is, after this group goes, then those who looked around the garden and all that, they will start telling the persons who sat in the prayer hall, you missed something. There's a beautiful garden, so many flowers, you missed all that. This is the Lokahani in the eyes of the worldly people. In the eyes of worldly people, spiritual people are missing something of this world. That's what they feel. See, the spiritual life of a devotee is, so to say, swimming against the current. We are swimming against the current, and in two ways we are swimming against the current. One is in our own internal life. The tendencies of the mind are to go outwards. We are trying to divert them towards the self, towards God. That is one swimming against the current. And the other swimming against the current is in the world. The world is going in one direction. It's going towards enjoyment and power and position, all that. And the devotee is moving in the other direction, opposite direction, going towards God. So that's also swimming against the current. When worldly people see this man or woman is different, and they cannot tolerate it. Most of the worldly people cannot tolerate a person out of the flock, so to say, or odd man out. They want everyone to belong to the flock. So they will raise complaints. They will try to tell you are missing something, or why are you like this? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't you come to the cinema? Go here, go there. They will try all that. It is their nature, you cannot change it. But the devotee has to put up with all that. He should not worry about public opinion. He is not there to please people. So that is one lokahana uchinta na karya. One need not worry about public opinion of there were relatives, there will be colleagues, anyone. Because the devotee will hold on to strict moral rules. He or she will not lie, will not give or take bribe. No. Others cannot tolerate it. They will find this is strange. Sometimes they will feel even that what this man is doing is right, but they cannot do it. They will try to drag that man down to their level. So all kinds of things will happen. But devotee has to stand up to all that with conviction. The conviction is the only thing that will save the devotee. If he or she is convinced that what he or she is doing is right, that conviction alone will save him or her from all this public criticism. Public criticism will come. There is no doubt about it, it will come. So no, जो इस, I think there is one couplet which says, जो इस नगरी में रहते हैं, उन्हें बावरे बावरे कहते हैं. Those who live in this city, people call them mad. जो जगत का ताने सह न सके, वो इस नगरी में आवे क्यों? If you cannot put up with the criticism of the world, why should you come to this city of the devotees? City of the devotees, people, those who are outside. For them, devotees are a different kind. That's how they will tell. So these lokahani, criticism will be there. We have to put up with it. There's another kind of lokahani. Sometimes it might come to us, to every devotee. We are all human beings. That is anxiety. Anxiety about what will happen in this life or what will happen in the next life. What will happen in this life? Sometimes it is about the security. Sometimes it is about the future. Whether there will be people around when I need, whether I will have enough resources. That also might come. We have to understand that this worry comes to even those who have, so to say, secured their future. So to say, so-called securing of future. Those who have accomplished it, even they will have worries. Because if gathering resources could free oneself from worries, many people in this world would have been free of worries. They have enough resources in terms of money and people, enough to last for generations, but still they are worried about their future. So, lokahani, chinta doesn't really depend on the resources or the way we have secured our future. It depends on our surrender to God, our dependence on God. More we depend on God, less shall we worry. That is the point. More we surrender to God, less shall we worry. That's why I said this is also a criteria. Narada says, Lokahana uchinta na karya. Don't worry about what will happen in this life because you have dedicated Atma Nivedana. You have dedicated yourself to God. Atma Nivedana. You have dedicated your Loka Vyapara, Veda Vyapara to God. All actions have been dedicated to God. Don't worry about what will happen in the future. And when we worry, we should be honest. We worry not because we have not secured our future or not because we have not been careful. We worry because we lack dependence on God. We worry because our self-surrender is not complete. So we have to be honest. We have to be honest and study ourselves. If there is still worry in my heart, in spite of taking all the precautions, it is because I do not have dependence on God. I have not surrendered myself to God. So This is the criteria, and this is the reason why we need not worry. The devotees need not worry about this life. And he also adds Veda Vyapara, which means the so to say religious activities. See, many devotees or many people perform pujas, yajnas and all that in order to secure their next life. They want to earn punyam and secure the next life. The devotee does not accrue punyam, so to say. Kamya karmas, devotee does not undertake. Devotee doesn't want punyam out of doing puja. When a devotee performs puja or any religious activity, he or she wants love of God, purity of heart, not punyam. So sometimes worry may come that we have not done anything for our future life after the death of this body. We have not strived for punyam. Narada says, don't worry about your future life also. You have dedicated yourself to God. God will look after. We have surrendered ourselves. Those who have surrendered themselves to God, their actions, everything, they need not worry either about the present or about the future. God will take care. And see, we have innumerable assurances from God. Name bhakta pranashyati. Yoga kshemam vahamyam. Innumerable assurances from God that God will look after those who surrender themselves to Him, who depend on Him. And we have instances in the lives of bhaktas where God has stood by them. Now, bhakta doesn't want God to stand by him or her. It is God's nature. If you depend on God, God will see that you don't suffer, that we don't suffer. So that is what Narada says, Lokahana chintana karya. Don't worry, basically, because you have dedicated yourself, all your actions unto God. Having dedicated, you don't worry. You don't worry about what will be the results of even present actions. Don't worry even about that. You have dedicated, now let God decide. Let God do whatever He thinks is good for us. And when that sense of surrender, when that sense of dependence, that weakens, it is then that the anxiety comes, the chinta comes. Chinta comes when the sense of dependence, when sense of surrender, that reduces, that weakens. That is what this sutra tells. Now, next sutra is also very important. He says, yes, you surrender everything unto God, depend on God, but do not neglect your duties. Na tadasaddhau loka vivaharo heyaha kintu phalatyagaha tat sadhanam cha karyameva. There are two versions. One is na tat siddhau or na tad asiddhau. Both are there. Two versions are there. This tad asiddhau seems more apt than tat siddhau. The meaning is, so long as one has not attained that, attained that means attained that bhakti, or attained that sense of complete dependence on God, even after attaining also. One should not give up loka vyavahara. One should not give up one's own responsibilities on life. One should meticulously follow one's responsibilities in life, fulfill one's responsibilities in life. Loka vyavaharo na heyaha. It should not be given up. Kintu phalatyagaha. But one should give up the results of actions, not the actions themselves. And tat sadhanam karyameva. One should be up and doing in undertaking all spiritual practices that lead to bhakti. So it is an exhortation to a devotee to be careful. One has to be careful. The earlier one says, be carefree. Be free of care. Lokahana chinta na karya. Be free of care. But this one says, loka vyavahara na heyaha. Be careful. Both are necessary. And actually, only when a person is careful, he or she can be carefree. So that is the second exhortation, where Narada tells us how we should live in this world. Okay, we'll see you on next class. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.